Hi and hello, everyone. I'm glad to be part of this third Auckland International Conference on Social Sciences, Education, Entrepreneurship, and Technology, AICSEET 2022, which is being held at Massey University, Albany, Auckland, New Zealand from 23rd to 24th November 2022. I'm equally delighted to share the findings of our research on environmental sustainability practices among Malaysian SMEs. So let me start my presentation by introducing the authors. I am Shamuni Kunjiapu, the presenter for today and the main author of this paper. My co-authors would be Punita Sinapan, Farah Akmal Anor Salim, and Mazwin Hajar Maidin. So let us dive direct into the background of this study. Environmental issues are one of the most pressing concerns for business around the world, especially under the triple bottom concept. Businesses need to pay equal attention to the society around them, the environmental issues around them, as well as making profit for them, the economic aspect. Okay, now, the change in the business landscape and the shifts in regulation has made businesses to re-evaluate their business activities and decisions. The importance of environmental sustainability issues are clearly discussed by United Nations under their Sustainable Developmental Goals, and these SDGs often become benchmark for businesses to assess their own activities. Now, this scenario is not any different in Malaysia. Businesses are very concerned about environmental issues, and the government is very concerned and very committed. And this can be seen in Malaysia's 12th Malaysia Plan for the year 2021 to 2025, where Malaysia aspires to lower its greenhouse gas emission by 2030 and become a carbon neutral nation by 2050. Okay, so let's take a look at the statement of problems. Okay, here in Malaysia, SMEs contribute significantly to the growth of the nation. And unfortunately, SMEs also contribute negatively to the environment. So there is an adverse effect when SMEs operate because studies show that SMEs contribute to carbon emission roughly about 70% of the global industrial pollution. So we need to balance this situation. We want SMEs to contribute positively to the growth of the nation, but we want to arrest that negative effect to the planet. We want SMEs to reduce or engage in practices that would minimize the damages that is being done to the environment. Okay, studies that have been done from the Malaysian perspective had mainly been focusing on large corporations. And we do have studies that were looking at SMEs, but these were done in other than Malaysia, all right, in different countries. Therefore, it is very important for us to investigate what is the current scenario in Malaysia, what actually causes or interest these SMEs to engage in practices. Are they even engaging in such practices? We need to know, and we need to know how we can motivate them to be part of these practices. So we move on to the second part, which is the literature review. And we start by looking at the SMEs. So what we have on the screen would be the definition for SME. We see that SMEs are classified into two main groups, one from the manufacturing and the other from the services sector. And there are three classifications: micro, small, and medium type of businesses based on the sales turnover and also the number of employees that they have engaged or they have at their end. Okay, SMEs are the backbone of economic growth for all developed and developing countries, including Malaysia. So they are very important in creating job opportunities, reducing poverty, improving manufacturing capabilities. They contribute to export rate, And all these elements are very, very critical to the economic growth. In 2021, in Malaysia, 97% of all business establishments consisted of micro, small, and medium enterprises. They also contributed to 37% of the GDP, Malaysian GDP, 12% to Malaysian total exports, and 48% to the employment in Malaysia. Okay, so there is a large contribution positively, and as mentioned before, they also unfortunately contribute negatively to the environment. So they are not being so environmentally friendly. So we need to know how we can overcome this situation. What can be done? So we look at the environmental sustainable practices as the second title or the subtitle in the literature review. So, what do we mean by environmentally sustainable practices? There are many definitions, but mainly when we talk about environmental sustainable practices, it is all about focusing on reducing the greenhouse emissions, minimizing environmental accidents, minimizing carbon footprints, working with not for profit organizations, educating our employees, going for responsible sourcing of raw material, conserving natural resources. And most of these instances, we see that businesses engage in sustainable practices due to the owner manager's perception. And the literature shows the large corporations that are engaged in these practices, they do that due to not just the owner's orientation, but it is mainly because of the pressures from various stakeholders, their shareholders, their customers, the employees, and policy makers. And they enjoy benefits when they do all these environmentally sustainable practices. They see there's improvement in their business. They get support from their customers. They get to increase their market share. But all these are for large corporations. So we need to find out what are the motivations or reasons for Malaysian SMEs to adopt these environmental sustainability practices. So, to do this, we have used a qualitative exploration because we wanted to know more since the literature is very little on Malaysian SMEs sustainable practices. So, we wanted to find out more, dig deeper. So, we used a semi structured in depth interview. And for this study, we interviewed a total 10 SME owners from both the manufacturing and the services. And these SMEs were located in Klang Valley, Selangor, Malaysia. Klang Valley, Selangor, and Federal Territories are where most of our SMEs are located. The respondents were assured of anonymity, and the data collected, we analyzed it using thematic analysis. So, what did we find? All right, so this is the interesting outcome. Before I present the findings, so this would be the demographic details. We have majority of the business owners being males. We see that the age range for majority of the owners, they were young, 31 to 40, and we also have equal number who are quite experienced, 50 to 60 years old. Most of them have at least a secondary education. They were married. Majority of the businesses were from the services, and we see that many of these businesses have been established for quite a long time, 20 to 30 years, and we see that they fit well within the definition of SME by looking at the sales turnover less than 300,000 ringgit and employee number less than 5. So it is confirmed that all our participants were SME employees and owners indeed. Okay, so when we analyze the transcript, We read through the transcript many times, and we picked out the quotes, the important words from each line of that interview. And these quotes were then collapsed into sub themes. So the rectangles that we can see on the thematic maps are our sub themes that we derive from the quotes from the transcript. So we have cost savings and reputations and clientele that we combine or we consolidate into our first theme, which would be the business benefit. We have sub-themes, premises requirement, and authorities requirement as theme number two that we call as mandatory reason. And theme three is the voluntary reason. To answer the research question, what are the factors that motivate the Malaysian SMEs? These themes gives us the answer. The factors that drive Malaysian SMEs to engage and in environmentally sustainable practices would be the business benefits, the mandatory requirements, and also voluntary reasons. And the analysis showed us that most of the SMEs engage in energy and water conservation, waste management, recycling, and employee education on ES practices. And we see that the reason for such participation is obviously the business benefits, such as improved customer retention, enhanced business image, cost savings. This was followed by the second reason, mandatory requirements, which were enforced by their landlords or by the local government. And the final and the third reason is voluntary participation. Voluntary participation was just done by a few of those SME owners because they wanted to give back something to the environment, although that was an additional cost to them and their business. Okay, and we found that many of these business owners, they don't voluntarily engage because they don't see any immediate returns or financial returns to their businesses. So it is very important for the relevant authorities uh, to persuade these SMEs to engage in such practices through financial and also non-financial incentives, right? Because we see that uh, funding is a big issue to SMEs as well. And that is one of the reasons why they don't engage in such practices voluntarily. So we would recommend for future scholars and researchers who are looking at this topic in this field, they could investigate further into ways how we can encourage SMEs to adopt and engage in environmentally sustainable practices through financial and non financial methods. As mentioned earlier, this is an ongoing research. We are still interviewing more participants. We hope to find out a lot more, and we would be able to contribute a lot more to the knowledge in this area. So, with that, I thank all of you for your time and your attention. Right. Thank you, everyone.